So, hot take. The Marvel movies are really good. My favorite character from the MCU has to be Captain America, and so today we're going to be making the worst Captain America. John Walker from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or as I like to call him, shithead Captain America. We're going to be making a diorama of that one scene where, spoiler, he does a particularly bad thing. So first, we need a base. I did this in my now standard way by cutting out a cube of wood from a 4x4 and sanding and painting it several times with semi-gloss black spray paint before hitting it with a semi-gloss varnish. And now, we need our captain. There's a couple of figures being released for John Walker's captain, but none of them are out yet, and honestly, they don't actually look all that great in my opinion. So instead, I grabbed my old Marvel Legends Age of Ultron Captain America, who I recently replaced/upgraded, and went to work giving him a downgrade. First of all, I spent some time getting him into the right pose, before locking him in place by applying thinned superglue into all his joints. The John Walker suit is quite different from our classic cap, so I needed to sculpt the new details onto it. But first I removed the existing details with a Dremel, so I wasn't sculpting bulk on top of bulk, as I didn't want this to end up as a Rob Liefeld piece. Once our captain was suitably flat-chested, I broke out the epoxy. I've been doing a lot of sculpting lately, having both used green stuff and milliput, so this time I decided to try out mixing the two together, as I've heard good things. I do feel like I need to work on the ratio of milliput to green stuff, as I felt my mix tended to be a bit more water-soluble than I like, but the overall feel was really good to work with, and dried nice and strong. The sculpting itself took a lot longer than I expected, as I've never done something so detail-oriented before, and while the final look is a bit messy, it'll do for the job. Then I got to work on the base, where I needed to match the cobblestone streets from the scene. I first wrapped the whole thing in cling wrap and painter's tape, so I could work on it without ruining the nice finish I already had. To do this, I used the same styrofoam plate technique I used in my Curse City building video, which not nearly enough of you watched. I mean, it's pretty cool. Go take a look. Basically, I textured and cut out the individual bricks before gluing them down with some PVA. I did skip the grout step this time, as I had a different plan I wanted to try. So with that done, I just needed to add a pin to Cap's foot, and due to the weight of the figure, I decided to actually use a nail for this. Once that was good to go, it was on to painting. I started by applying a solid coat of black to the base, before priming Cap and his shield in black as well. Then I dry assembled the whole thing and hit it with a zenithal highlight of white from above. Going back to the base, I painted all the smaller stones in a light brown before making the larger ones gray. Then gave the whole thing a heavy dry brush of vanilla and an all-over black wash before one more highlight. Once that was all done, I got ready to do the grout, and this time we're using real grout. Basically, I brushed some light gray tile grout into all the recesses, making sure to get as much off of the raised sections as possible, before applying isopropyl alcohol mixed with watered down PVA over top to lock it all in place. And boom, no more painting required. Well, for now. On Cap himself, I did most of the work once again with craft paint, painting the bulk of the suit in a dark blue, the straps and pockets in black, and then all the stripes in red. I highlighted these all up in a pretty rough and sketchy way, and honestly, once again spent a lot longer on this than I expected. I realized partway through that this is actually the largest scale figure I've ever painted, and because of this, my usual approach just wasn't working as well as it does at smaller scales. And so I spent a lot of time going back and forth on this and just fiddling. So, while I work on that, quick movie/TV talk. While the Disney Empire is terrifying and hugely problematic, I can't deny how impressive the MCU really is. These new Disney Plus shows in particular were a fun surprise, as I was thoroughly bored by the Netflix Marvel shows. We watched the first season of Jessica Jones and Daredevil, but lost interest in both partway through their second seasons. But WandaVision was amazing. It was so weird and interesting, and because of that, I was actually not really interested in watching the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, as it just seemed like it was going to be an ordinary spy action show. But I was once again pleasantly surprised, seeing how they explored a world dealing with the results of not only a genocidal disaster, but that disaster's reversal 5 years later, while also trying to figure out what to do in the absence of a figure like Captain America, was really well done. However, my biggest issue was how clearly the show wanted to say more politically, but clearly couldn't take as strong a stance as it wanted due to the system it was made under. But anyways, back to the project. Eventually, once I had all the colors down, it just wasn't really working, as it ended up way too bright. So I took some washes to it and darkened it down. These dried a bit messier than I wanted, but ended up looking okay. Then it was just a few more highlights to red and some fiddling with the face, and he was done. For the shield, I painted the whole thing in silver before applying the colors over top in really thin layers. This ended up being, once again, a bit messy, so I went back with some darker glazes and washes to try and smooth it out before hitting the shield with a semi-gloss varnish. And with all that done, there was just one last detail to do: the blood. I mixed up some blood using some red and black contrast paints with a glossy, fleshy wash thrown in to make it a bit richer. Then I applied this in progressively darker layers to the shield and bricks. And here's again a spot where the scale threw me off, as while this thin paint works really well for blood effects on smaller minis, it was a bit too runny for this scale and ended up pooling a bit more than I wanted. So once again, there was a lot of fiddling. And when it was done, I assembled the whole thing, and I'm pretty happy with the finished product. Between the sculpting and painting, this was a huge learning curve, and I spent a lot more time fighting with the work than I expected. But in the end, I'm glad I did. This really makes me want to pick up some larger display scale minis or busts to try and push my painting abilities, as if this taught me anything, it's just how different painting in different scales can be. For now, thank you all again for your support, and if you want more pictures of this guy or want to keep up with what I'm up to, follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And most importantly, subscribe to make sure you don't miss what's coming next. And of course, a special thanks goes out to my fantastic patrons for putting up with my, frankly, painfully slow pace. If you like what I'm doing and want to get involved, hop over onto my Patreon page, as we have some fun rewards going on there. But for now, I'm Anders, and I hope you all stay safe and have a good one.